Today, welcome to the podcast. We are talking about parenting and a lot of the shame that parents feel often for their kids' behaviors and sometimes for their kids' challenges and struggles. And, we know I want to start this out by saying everybody that's listening knows that I'm not a parent yet. So I can't even imagine, I can't even begin to fathom the amount of feelings that you have as parents. But I want to make sure to keep in mind, we know that these thoughts aren't logical, right? Like, it's not like you're consciously being like, "Oh, I wish my kid were different," or whatever. But these feelings
Mm,
do come up often, right?
I mean, not to be like a negative Nilly here, but honestly, us parents, I think, and I can go back to when I was first pregnant with Axel. You're usually surrounded by other women, and maybe you're with other people who are having babies, and you do have, because of society's expectations, right? This need to compare. And we're
Right.
constantly comparing, what am I doing? How much, like, I remember caring how much my babies weighed. I remember caring if my babies were doing certain developmental things
Yes.
on time. And I had this background in all of
Yeah.
this, but I felt like the pressures of that were even higher because of it. But
Yeah.
yes, I do think the thoughts are conscious, but I don't think we realize why they're coming from like how they're coming to the
I
subconscious.
guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's not
Yeah.
like you look at your newborn baby and you're like, "Be better." You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
no. Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's not
Yeah.
like something that you're like, we're implying that you don't like your children, I guess is what I with my
Right.
disclaimer. But
Right.
that's the point. Is like if you were to have a child in the middle of nowhere and you had nobody around you and you were on the top of a mountain, no social media, nothing, would you really be bothered by some of these things? I guess that's where my
100%.
thought was going, right? It's coming from, like you said it, sociedad, right? Society's expectations, baby girl. And that's what we're going to talk about today
Yes,
because it's
and
not fair.
it's not fair and it's so real. And I think because we have this insight as to what's going on with the brain and understanding the subconscious does not mean that we are absolutely perfect humans. It just means we
No.
have tools to help us through things. And I will tell you, Axel, my oldest child, has been my greatest teacher in this department because he has been like, here you go, mom. Here's a slice of humble pie from day one, right? Like
Yeah.
he has served me that dish over and over again. And it's so incredible because I get to now use the tools that we talk about because he
Yep.
was not, and we're diving into also the nurture revolution with Dr. Kirschenbaum, and she talks all about nurture and how critical it is in the first years of life, even before you have a baby. Like the thoughts you're thinking are going to your child. Are you stressed when you're pregnant? I was a total stress case when I was pregnant.
Totally.
And I did have a lot of creeping and crawling and primitive reflex integration in my life, but I didn't have any of the subconscious work done. So I
Mhm.
constantly kept doing that comparison thing and then would trip up my emotional system, which would then trip up my lower brain development and making me think that these threats were real. So it was this
Real. Yeah.
vicious cycle. So
Totally.
Axel has been an amazing teacher for me to help me understand that, like, there's kids, and I was going to reference Greer's book about the orchids and the dandelion
Oh,
kids.
yes.
How
I love that.
epigenetics is so cool. It's basically being able to change the DNA imprint from what you're adopting from your parents, their stuff, and you just take it on as your own, and it changes your genetic expression.
Mhm.
And when you have a child who's more of an orchid child, which they're saying is more susceptible to the environment and needing higher nurturing degrees coming at
Mhm.
them. Does that make sense? Needing
Yeah.
more nurturing. They need more nurturing in their life versus the dandelion DNA makeup, who is a little bit more resilient naturally.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Axel is 100% more of the orchid. Siggy's definitely more of the dandelion.
Totally.
But I was also so different when I had both of them because you're never the
Right.
same parent. And Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this. You're never, that really hit me when you're never the same
So
parent.
real. And you don't have the same childhood. He talks about that all the time too, right? Like as kids, people will say like, I just I guess you just no, I think I just saw a TikTok about this today where they're like, what so many people can interpret the same experience so differently. And for some people, it's a traumatic experience. And for some people, it's not. And there's a huge difference in that. A lot of that has to do with how what your nervous system is like beforehand, right? Are you set to regulate more easily, or are you set to go into that fight or flight mode still? But another thing, and I have to find this person because it was a video that it was very interesting. They were saying after a lot of it, what has to do with it is what happens after the traumatic event. So if you're somebody who has a traumatic event, you live through it, and right afterward you have connection with a person,
Mm-hmm.
the likelihood that it's gonna turn into actual trauma in your body and in your brain is so much lower than if you just experience the thing and then just keep going on with your life, right? And
Right.
that has so much to do with the way that your brain is connected, the way that your parents, relate to you, the way that your family is set up, right, as a child. And I think that that's also for parents to know that is so important. Which kind of brain does my child have?
Oh, I love this. And I think this is hitting home for me so much because my kids are almost 8 and almost 5. And I even wrote on their Valentine's Day cards, like, I'm sorry for anything I've ever done to ever hurt you unintentionally, because I know that no child comes out unscathed, right? And I know it's so funny because they're like, Mom, what does that even mean? And I'm like, just come to me when you feel like trauma has happened. Just come
Yeah,
and let's talk about it, right? I want
absolutely.
to own it. And I think this is the inspiration behind this podcast today, is really stepping into our world today in 2024. I think there's so many parents who are like, you know what? I wasn't nurtured as a baby. My
Yep.
parents weren't nurtured as babies. So
Yep.
and this is what Greer talks about too, is, and why we love her so much, is that we weren't nurtured. So we don't know how to nurture. And so we're teaching ourselves how to nurture us and going back into our childhood stuff while we're raising babies that we're
Yes.
supposed to nurture. And we're like, it's so foreign to us, right? And for me, I want my children to know that I'm not perfect. I'm going to mess
Yeah.
up, and you're going to have trauma from me being your mom. And
Yeah.
that's what it is. But here's what I'm going to give you is repair. I'm going to give you all the
Yes.
repair you ever could want. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to have those uncomfortable conversations so we can go straight into it and understand and kind of just take away the stigma that we have to fit into society's expectations. And just
Exactly.
that's the goal of the nurture revolution, right?
100%. We just did a reconnect today about I'm safe to stand out, right, in the
Yes,
world,
yes,
and it's okay to
yes.
just be yourself and for everybody to be different. But think about when you were little, the only thing you want is to fit in. I remember, oh,
Oh,
my mom would
yes,
never let me have, like, I have a big forehead, so she always gave me bangs, but all the cool thing was for girls to do their hair, like, back like
yes.
this, and so I would go to school and, like, run into the bathroom and be like, "Tuck, tuck, tuck," like, pushing my bangs back, and just, like, little
Yes,
things that you're always, like, trying to, and I have, like, a small mouth, but then Mary Kate and Ashley had, like, a bigger mouth, so I would, like, stretch my lips to try to make them bigger, and it's just like, "Dude, what are you doing?" But it's also survival, right? It's survival is fitting in,
right.
fitting in. And so it's a totally natural instinct that we have. But once we get older, it's good to be able to understand it is safe to be yourself, whatever that means. And if you don't stand out naturally, if you're somebody who naturally doesn't stand out, that's great too. Whatever fits with your own
Mhm.
personality, right? And I think that's something that with parents, you feel this thing where you're like, "Oh, my kid's the only one that does that. My
Mm.
kid's the only one that has that challenge. My kid's the only one that hasn't done that yet," right? And you know what I'm talking about with that,
Yeah,
the walking, right? When you're
right.
the one kid that isn't walking yet. My mom laughs because I was a super late walker.
Mhm.
Not that I was spending that time crawling, by the way. I was just sitting and hanging out. My dad would literally pick me up and, like, move my legs and be like, "Come on, move, walk," whenever we were gonna go see their friends who had kids, because he was like, "Well, maybe she just needs this one push." And my mom was like, "Sure, of course, that's gonna work. Great.
Yeah,
Like, teach her to walk
right.
2 seconds before she's gonna go meet
Yeah.
her peers," you know? Yeah.
But think about why we do it though. So this is so cool because you just mentioned it. We all want to fit in. We all want to blend, because then if we stand out, we're taking a stance of, okay, I must have something that other people don't, and they're going to look up to me, and then I'm going to realize I'm going to fall short and I'm going to self-sabotage. So it's this crazy like internal process that's happening. And then we're doing that as parents now. So just like what
Exactly.
you said, as kids, I wanted to fit in, right? And I remember always wanting to fit in too, but I was always okay to be silly and goofy when I
Mhm.
wanted to be.
Yeah,
And that was my like safe space. And I was really confident in sports. And that was like where I knew I could just like be who I was because I was confident there. But then in
totally.
school, I was like, oh my gosh, if you call on me, I'm gonna turn bright red and freak out. Like I won't even know what to say. And they're gonna be like, you're dumb.
That's I was
Right?
the exact
Yeah.
opposite. Yeah, where I was like,
Right.
"Don't make me run. Don't make me do
Yeah.
anything because
Yeah.
I'm a fall." Like this is
Yeah.
not fun for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And
Yeah,
then you were like, I want to answer all the questions. I like goody
exactly. I'm
two
like,
shoes, like
yeah, literally. Yeah,
teacher's pet. And so now as parents, being able to see your child as a separate person, you are their guide, okay?
right.
Their behavior is not it's not okay, it is a representation of your parenting. I'll say that because there is a component to being, you
Yeah,
have
it
to
just
be able to
is.
model. Yeah, like you're modeling. And there's a great quote about kids don't always listen to you, but they are watching you. And whatever you're
Right.
doing, they're modeling, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because my daughter, who will do things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where'd she get that? And then I will catch myself doing it. I'm like, oh, it came from me. I
Yes.
didn't tell her to say certain things, but she knows how to put it together in the right
Hmm.
context. And she's not even 5. So I will see the modeling part. And then there's the brain wiring, right? So, how
Absolutely.
is the brain wired? And then that's influencing the parenting. So, because we just posted something yesterday that got a lot of traction. It was about the proprioceptive system. And it was
Yep.
about, does your child crash into walls, pet the dog too hard, and touch everything? That was just
Mhm.
a few signs that the proprioceptive system is not working how it's intended to. So, if you have that child who's like the bull in the china shop, just
Mhm.
crashing through the joint and roughhousing all the time, constantly just egging kids on, he's going to be outcasted in society naturally because some systems are like, no, I don't want that. And then you as the parent go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my kid? Why doesn't he
Exactly.
fit in? Why is, and I say he because it does tend to be boys more than girls, but you know what? Use whoever you want in this example. And then they start to go into that shame. I messed up. I'm a
Exactly.
terrible parent. And then
Exactly.
when they get the feedback from the teachers, from their friends, whoever, that we don't really want your child at our house because they're not respecting it or they're hurting my child and it's not fun for them, then the parent shuts down and they don't know what to do.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so our mission is to teach that it's the brain, but it's also the parent. And there's something you can do about it. And you can do it in the confinement of your own home. And we can help guide you through it because I'm literally doing it with my kids right now. And I know there's
Awesome.
such a need for all of us parents to be nurtured and then learning how to nurture our kids from a regulated space.
Absolutely. I think regulation in the parent, of course, is paramount to being able to see this for what it is in the kids. Because if you are in that dysregulated space and you see your kid being, kind of the outcast or having this challenge that nobody else is going to have, number one, it's always going to be emotional for you. That's just a fact because it's your child. That's it, period.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, that's just part of being a parent. But the way that your body and your brain react to it, whether you're going to go into that fight or flight, like really shut down mode where you're like, oh, I can't do anything for my kid, like get away from me, right? Or you're going to go into that overcompensating. I'm now going to be like a helicopter parent, right? And I'm going to go and find everything that I can do to help them. And it depends on each parent how they react. So that's always why we say parents need to take care of themselves first, and then they can approach this shame thing. And there's so much shame, like, even like, with the smallest things, with the way that what you give your kids for lunch, for example.
Mm. Yep.
Somebody's always going to have an opinion and be, oh, well, they shouldn't really be eating that, or they should be eating that, or they shouldn't be whatever, whether or not they have access to screens at a certain age, right? And so that on top of like the shame of having a kid that's like a little bit different in any way. First of all, every kid has something that's different. That's
Yep.
also being a human.
Yeah.
But I think like even if your kids are like traditional or like typical or whatever it is, there's always going to be something else to be ashamed of, quote
Yeah.
unquote. Please, quote unquote, because I don't actually believe that. But
Right.
because of society's expectations. So that's what I was saying in the beginning, that it's not fair because parents have this like huge, like super high bar that they have to reach. And they're just like constantly trying to reach it. And then it goes higher and higher and higher. And you're just like, what is going on with the world? Why can't I just be myself and be okay with the decisions that I'm making as a parent, right?
Right.
That's where I'm saying like there's always going to be something. So if you don't work on yourself first and your own subconscious beliefs, then that stuff is going to just trigger you forever.
Right. And it's funny as you said this because I was just thinking, like, what are the normal things that people say? Like, and someone actually just said this to me. I just turned 39 years old, and they said to me, "We really like you. Your parents did such a great job on you." And I was like, thinking in my head, like, and my first response, I didn't even think of this until you said this. I was just like, yeah, they sure did. And they did. They're great
Of
parents, right?
course.
They were amazing. Were they regulated? Absolutely not. And they I would say this to their face and we talk about it all the time because now our relationship is so different because we're all regulated. And I was
Doing
just
the brain
thinking
work.
like
Yeah.
it's amazing how much by us doing the brain work, we can now have an incredible relationship and we can like, not shame each other, but we can call each other out in a very loving,
Hmm.
compassionate way. So
Absolutely.
and I my actual response to that is like, I'm at 39 years old and for 14 years I've been regulating my nervous system and doing for the past like 8 years subconscious work. And I'm like, actually, I reparented myself. So that was
Yep.
actually a pat on the back to me. Yes, I did do a great job of parenting.
You're like,
I
thank
am
you.
not the same person I was 14 years ago, and that is a fact. And here's
Absolutely.
here's what having kids is really about, in my personal opinion. We all want to have kids because that's what society says we should do, right? We should. And I agree with that. I think a lot of people make amazing parents. And then I think there's people that I'm like, you know what? I'm so happy that you're focusing on you first before you have kids
Yes.
because that is so important. And I thought I did focus on myself a lot before I had kids,
Right.
but clearly Axel was like, no, mom, you haven't done enough
There's a
work.
little more to
Let
do.
me show you where you have more room to grow. And that's what kids do. They shine this big, giant spotlight on what we have to work on. And I think if we can all, as parents, take that for what it is and just say, okay, thank you for showing me where I get to grow
Yes.
versus fit into this box. You need to
Yes.
comply. You need to obey. The word obey is so triggering for me because I just am like, no, they are a human that needs respect. And I'm like,
Yes.
and I don't obey. Like,
Guidance.
I listen and I am guided by, but I'm my own person, right? So I
Yep.
don't know. The obey word really gets me. Probably something I need to go work on. um,
Yep. Write it down, baby girl.
right. But I think about like even one of my favorite examples of my current parenting life was Axel last season started his first season of baseball.
Right.
And
I remember.
and I am very athletic, like I've mentioned a million times here. And I remember watching him not be able to hit a ball. It was
Oh,
and it turned almost into like kind of a funny thing by the end. And it wasn't funny though, because I knew what was going on with him. He got hit his very first time ever going to learn how to bat, right? He gets hit on the knuckles in the batting cage. And the coaches didn't set him up. They didn't prepare him. So they just threw him in. He gets hurt and he's like, oh, forget this noise. Like, this is scary. I'm not
yeah.
going to do this. So then every time he got to bat, it was like, he would just purposely step out of the batter's box. He would be like 13 seconds delayed on his swing. And the coaches were just like, what do we do? What do we do? And I was sitting in there watching, just going, okay, Dani, this is a lesson. This is a test for you
Hmm.
because you could shut down and be like, why isn't my child athletic like me?
Yeah.
Or you could make jokes about it, which I'm not going to lie. I did make some jokes about it in the sense of not joking at him, but joking
Of
at me,
course not. Yeah.
having the joke on me, right? Like, of course, I'm going to get a kid that's not super athletic, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm like, okay, here's my lesson. And what do I do? And so I knew he didn't love it. And the next season rolls around. And I mean, it got to the point, Paloma, where people were like, they would put bags behind him, like obstacles where he couldn't step out of the box and he had to stay in it.
Right.
And even that, he would step over, he would literally
Over it.
climb over and out to like get away from hitting the ball. And we're just like, I worked with him. We did some reconnects. We did tons of brain work. We talked about it incessantly, like, okay, buddy. But that was just it. Like we were going through his cortex and we were trying to
Yep.
like talk him through something that he was like, I'm not wired to do it. I have a
No.
deep fear that I'm gonna get hurt. And then, then I was like, maybe it's his eye teaming. And that's where we're doing fencers and helping with that.
Hmm.
But then it really was rooted in me needing to just be the parent of confidence and really starting to look at what's going on with me. So, long story short, I was faced with, do I sign him up again?
Oh,
And
yeah.
at first, I was like, no, I'm not going to do it because I can't handle in my subconscious the humiliation of a child who can't hit a ball. Because
Right.
I play softball as an adult and I'm like the girl that gets up there and wants to hit and do all the things, right? And I have a son who's, like, terrified of it. So I was like, "Should I just avoid it? Because that would be the easy thing to do, right?"
Mhm.
And then I was like, "Hold on. I need to prepare my kids for this world out there that is not gonna just
Yes.
let them off the hook for X, Y, and Z."
Yes.
Like the helicopter parent, right? And then I was like, "What do I really wanna teach him? I wanna teach him independence. I wanna teach him he has to learn how to face things that are hard, and I'm here to guide him and let him know it's safe and teach
Mhm.
him," right?
Yep.
So I ended up signing him up. He did not like that. He was like, "Ah!" He yelled at me. He
Oh,
actually ran around the house, like, a few laps, like, outside, like, not wanting to be with me. That was a total flight. First a
total flight.
fight, then a flight response. And then he came around and we made a deal because I was the mom who would get all their snack packs and I would take all the dyes out of his snack
Of
pack.
course, yeah.
And so then I was like, "Okay, what do and he goes, "Fine, I'll play if I get to have everything out of my snack bag," because he's always the kid that loses, like, the Kool-Aid, the blah, 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 the junk,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, "You know what do I value more? Like, avoiding the dyes or getting him to believe in himself and push," right? So I was like, "Fine,
Exactly.
you can have the
Yep.
snack packs, you can have anything in it, I don't care, I want you to play." And he's like, "Okay." So his brain was like, "Okay, I can get this." And I was, like, thinking in my head, I was like, we're gonna have a talk about, like, him talking about food that goes into his body and him realizing, like, it makes him feel horrible and he's
Yeah.
eventually not gonna want it anymore, right? Like, that's gonna happen."
Yeah, obviously.
And, anyway, so he's been playing and he goes and I didn't take him to his last practice, but he's like, "Mom, I hit the ball. I hit the ball."
Oh,
And you know what the difference was obviously me pushing from a different angle and working on me first, but then also too, he had a coach who, like, was so
yes.
confident and calm, and he trusted him implicitly. He's like, "This guy knows what he's doing."
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's the message here is, like, your kids are going to give you signs of when things are awry.
Well,
And
yeah, and also, like, Axel being able to feed off of the new coach's energy, who's very calm. I feel like that happens to you and to us all the time with
yeah,
parents, and they're like, "Why does my kid listen to you? Why do they" when we used to do sessions in person, like, the kids would be, like, melting down in the car, but the second they walked in with us, we'd be like, "Oh, are you ready to go downstairs and have fun?" And like, "Okay, great." Wipe the tears off and just go down and have the best time ever. Do all the exercises, do all the movements and all the stuff. And the parents would be like, "What?
yeah,
You're magic." It's like, "No, we're just more regulated and we don't have that emotional thing that you're always gonna have with your kid." Like, you're always
yeah,
gonna be we've all been there. Mothers can trigger you more than anybody in the entire universe. Am I right or am I right? So that's also it, right? It's like being able like, if you see that with your kid with somebody else, that means that they're craving that from you as well, right? And
right,
while the emotional bond is never gonna be it's never gonna be the same with you as it is with somebody that's not in the family, you can work on your bond being one of calm, regulated communication instead of like, I tell you what to do and you obey me, right? Or of an insecure parent who's like, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, what I'm doing right," whatever it is, right? It's like whatever you're doing is gonna be what's right for your kid in that moment. It's all about being able to move forward and continue to evolve as a person, and that's how you're gonna help your kids the most, right? Is by
yes,
you showing them what it is.
yes. Going back really quick, your kids will melt down with the person they feel safe with. That is like their emotional
Exactly.
dump time. Like my kids will literally dump on me. My mom always says, they never do that with me. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm their mom. And that's what you
Yeah.
do with your mom, right? You use her
Yes.
as your emotional dumping system. Is it healthy? No, but it's where they feel safe.
But it's also what it is, and it's your
Yeah.
job as a mom to be like, "I'm gonna help you how to figure this out."
100%. And
Yeah,
so here's to where parents listening to this, we are just wanting to help you understand that you're never going to get it right. You're going to be constantly, like Paloma said, in a state of growth. And as long as you're in that growth mindset, you will take every experience, reflect, and repair. And that's the
yep,
biggest piece is being able to repair what was done from a loving way. Because imagine, like all of us grew up with a right and a wrong, and you have to succeed and you have to do this. And it's like your success looks different than mine, right? And everyone has a different way of going
totally.
about life. And there's not one way to do it. And we're not saying even just in the cortex is the only way to do it. We just know that through our members and through our personal experience, it has what's given us the ability to say, yeah, whoopsies, I messed up and let
Yep,
it go. And there's
yes.
so many people who hang on to that mistake And then it starts to pile up for 3, 4, 5, and then they're just like, I'm worthless. I'm the worst. I don't want to do this anymore. And there's a
Absolutely.
newsflash here. When you're a parent, the last thing your kid ever wants to feel from you is giving up on them.
Totally.
It will just make their value and their worth just absolute zero. And then that carries on for the rest of their life. So, our call to action here is for all parents, no matter what stage of parenting that you are in, is
Yes.
to first look in the mirror and realize everything you're projecting out to your kids is probably something within you. And then
Mm-hmm.
also sign up for our parenting program that we're launching with Dr. Garrett Kirschenbaum. And that is starting April 1st. It is going to be
Yeah.
an epic, epic time for us
Amazing.
to create
Yes.
a parenting cohort that's rooted in nurture, that's rooted in repair. We have 4 live calls. It's going to be the 3 of us talking with all of our amazing members. And then we're guiding you through brain work. We're guiding you through her neuroscience of how do we see parenting? How do we work through these repairs?
Yes.
We're giving you subconscious reprogramming so you can be a better parent. And it's just a
And get rid
space.
of that shame and reframe things, not feel ashamed of things that your kids are doing or things that you're doing with your kids or whatever it is, because shame can be very harmful to the nervous system. It really is. And it creates it's a very intense emotion for humans to feel, for animals, for anybody, animals in general.
Mhm.
Shame is really, really very all encompassing. And so it also, has so much to do, like we were saying, with triggers and stuff. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in the program. We're going through the tools for regulating your nervous system from the root, from the bottom up. And we're also looking at all of these emotional components. We're going to have a whole call that's about, that kind of situation where you feel shame and you feel different. And you feel like your kid is, whatever, maybe not who you expected or whatever it is. And we're going to help you kind of work through all those emotional components as well. So this is going to be an amazing program. I'm so excited. And Greer is a genius. So it's going to be
Oh,
amazing.
it's gonna be great. And you know what's really cool is even if you're not a parent like Paloma's already going into the program thinking, what kind of parent do I want to become when I am
Exactly.
ready to be a parent? If I ever do want to be a parent, like what could that be? Or maybe you're someone who's like, I need to learn how to reparent me and like start with me first. So
Right.
this is what this is going to be
Exactly.
giving you is just that foundation to being because we all know about childhood trauma, childhood wounds. They show up for the rest of your life. Like those first 7 years of life are so critical.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, you're like, man, I wish I did things differently. This is what's so cool is that the neuroplasticity involved here is so forgiving. And
Yep.
you do have to work a little harder to repair, but it's an option.
Exactly.
There's
It's an
hope.
option. That's it. It's an option. And that's the whole point of what we say, what we talked about today with Dr. Courtney Kalla. You have so much that you can do in your own home with just your body and the floor. That's all you need. And
Mhm.
your brain and body will be connected in a way that's just so much more positive and so much more efficient and effective for who you truly are in this world.
Mhm.
YOLO, we only got one life. Let's make it the best we could possibly can. So
Right.
with that said, with that very inspirational outro, let's do the thing. So please sign up for our parenting program. It is going to be genuinely a revolutionary program. It's not like anything that's out there right now or that ever has been out there. I can say that with confidence.
Mhm.
Greer is a neuroscientist who has so much experience in research. And she went to school at NYU. She also did a program at Yale, at Columbia. I mean, she's been everywhere. And it's going to be amazing, honestly. And if you're ready to sign up, that's going to be on our website and at the link in bio and our Instagram. And speaking of Instagram, our Instagram is in the cortex underscore US. Our TikTok is in underscore the underscore cortex. Our Facebook is in the cortex US. We also just launched our Spanish Instagram, which is in the cortex underscore ESP. Our website is in the cortex.com. Please email us at hello@inthecortex.com. We're always around to answer questions. And remember, if you haven't signed up yet for a regular program, if you're more somebody who's like, I'd rather do this on my own, I'd rather do it self-paced, and I'd rather get started now, you don't want to wait until April 1st. Sign up and use promo code BRAINIAC for $10 off the first payment of your program. And we will see you around. Please keep sending us your questions.
Thank you.
Bye.